Laced with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast reviewing one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including written reviews and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to a bunch of stuff at one of our monthly tier levels, or buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section. This week on the Patreon, I released my 6th installment of my 6-part series on Stephen King's Everything's Eventual. That is up on the Patreon shop as well. That runs about 6 hours worth of content where I go through all 14 stories in Everything's Eventual. And I also have been doing full-length episodes for the $5 and $10 levels on Patreon, where I'm going through a bunch of movies that I'm watching for award season consideration. The most recent installment of that series that I call Patreon Potpourri included my thoughts on Elemental, Robot Dreams, Wish, and Suzumi. So that plus a ton of stuff is on Patreon. Once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all that and a bunch more content. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd, at Obsessive Viewer and on TikTok at OV Podcasts. In our main review this week, I'll be reviewing Dream Scenario, the new Nicolas Cage movie, which is currently out in theaters with my friend and IFJA colleague, Sam Watermeier. And later in the show, I'll be joined by Brent Leuthold to review It's a Wonderful Knife, which is now available to stream on Shudder following a recent run in theaters. So, of course, we have a packed show tonight. But before all of that, let me introduce my first guest. Joining me for our first review of the night is my friend and IFJA colleague, Sam Watermeier, whose written reviews can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Sam, how is it going?
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm good.
Nice. Good to hear. Good to hear. And
better now that I'm on the show.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What was it that you commented on? What was the episode? You had commented and said that you didn't get the invite. Was that last week's episode? Napoleon and
you reviewed May December.
Yes.
I was, kind of open about liking a lot, and you didn't invite me on, which deeply perturbed me. So,
well,
thanks for correcting that mistake.
You are so welcome.
I wasn't actually offended.
Your face is beet red right now. There are veins popping out of your forehead. I'm fearing for my life right now. But I'm very glad to have you on for this episode, at least for this review, Dream Scenario. And, of course, I want to give you the floor to, share what you've posted lately. And also, since we're both in the IFJA, what movies have you watched recently in the run up to the awards, that you would want to highlight and maybe push me toward watching?
All right, I'll start there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really late to the party here, but
Mm-hmm.
I finally saw Killers of the Flower Moon in the theater.
Yes.
Which is funny because I think it's actually streaming starting tomorrow. But I will say, if it's still playing in your area, for all the, folks around the country who are listening,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely see it in the theater if you can. It's a movie that really takes you on quite an emotional roller coaster journey, and I would say the theater is definitely the best place to experience it.
Wholeheartedly agree. Like the scope of it, just like in the cinematography, is just stunning. It's beautiful to see on the big screen. So I definitely agree.
Oh yeah, and I will say, people who are worried about the length of the movie, I mean, your mileage may vary, but I was exhilarated by the end. It never ceased surprising me. So many points in the film are just punches to the gut that just keep coming, and Scorsese ends it on just a brilliant note that kind of comments on sensationalism of violence and you know, how Native Americans are represented in the media. And I just, by the end, I was, like I said, I was just exhilarated by just how powerful the story was and how powerfully he told it. So I would say, while that's in theaters, definitely try to catch it.
Nice. Well said. Any others that pop out to you that you've watched lately for award season?
Let's see. Other award season movies. You know what? Let me go to my Letterboxd real quick and see what I've watched lately.
Okay, and while you do that, I will give a rundown of some of the stuff that you've written recently. I have a list here. You reviewed Dream Scenario, which we'll be reviewing tonight on Midwest Film Journal. Also, May, December, and for the No Sleep October series, you did an essay about Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes, and you also reviewed The Exorcist Believer. So I feel like I say this every time you're on the show, but you're having you're doing a lot. Like, well done.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot coming from a fellow critic I admire. So.
Oh, thank you. As misguided as that is, thank you.
Oh, no, not at all. I will. This isn't really for award season, but I will recommend Thanksgiving as well.
Yes.
If you're a slasher fan.
Which just got announced that they are going to be working on a sequel to come out in, I think, 2025.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Me too.
Basically, screener-wise, or screening season-wise, I'm still trying to catch up. There's a lot of stuff I need to see. You know, Robot Dreams, which you mentioned earlier. I basically need to catch up on pretty much all of the animated movies in consideration. I'm always bad about slacking behind in that category, but hopefully I won't this year. I know Miyazaki's latest movie is getting a lot of praise, The Boy and the Heron. I love his past work, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's what I'm looking forward to also, yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of my recent stuff.
Nice. Well done. Well, awesome. Yeah. I have a funny anecdote about Robot Dreams. This is a dumb anecdote that isn't really worthwhile, but Robot Dreams is fantastic. I loved it. And so this is embarrassing on my part, but everything I do is embarrassing. But, what I like to do when I go to sleep is I will listen to podcasts, and usually it is Freedom, the comedy podcast from Earwolf. That's like my go-to, just comfort podcast that's not movie or TV related. And I'll just load up a bunch of episodes, have them play on my phone while I'm sleeping, and then
nice.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll intercut those with some Obsessive Viewer episodes. And,
oh, nice.
And because I'm weird, but I did post, last night I added my Patreon potpourri that I referenced, where I review Elemental, Robot Dreams, Wish, and Suzumi. And this is one of the reasons why I do this, because sleep while I listen to podcasts, is because I had a dream last night where I was watching TV and they were promoting some continuation of the show How I Met Your Mother, an actual continuation of that show. And in the dream, Josh Radnor and Jason Segel were introducing it, and then And then like Josh Radnor in the dream said like, he just said like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, Robot Dreams is like, it's so weird that like my favorite like romantic comedy of the year is about a robot and a dog. And I'm like, in the dream, I'm like, I said the same thing. And it's because I was listening to myself say it while I was sleeping.
Oh my God, that's funny.
So dumb.
That's really funny. And oddly enough, kind of a perfect segue into dream scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Oh my God, that is perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and go into it because I do have one thing I wanted to bring up though. Midwest Film Journal. Just within the last day, I think today was the first day of the Samuel L. Jackson series.
Yes.
Hold On to Your Butts, an essay series on Samuel L. Jackson. Just to promote that a little bit, I will have an essay that'll be posted on December 22nd. Are you contributing anything for that series?
No, I missed it, unfortunately. I
Gotcha.
look forward to everyone else's contributions, though.
Yeah, me too. Definitely check out mine. I'll be talking about Unbreakable on the 22nd.
One of his best.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was so much fun to just revisit that movie and then reignite my kind of cold reaction to Glass, really. It also makes me a little bit curious to revisit it, but also I don't want to commit to doing that because I don't want to... Like, there was just elements of Unbreakable that, like, watching that with the memory of some of the stuff that happens in Glass just made me a little bit irritated that's where the story goes or that's how things kind of end up. It was a bummer.
Just act like it never happened.
Exactly.
Glass.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically what I'm doing. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't seen Glass?
No, but Unbreakable was such a important movie in my childhood that I just don't want Glass to take a big dump on it.
That is
which
fair.
It sounds like it does. I don't know. Maybe I'll love it. Some, you know, as some IFJ members probably think, I have horrible taste, so I might love it.
Yeah, I remember not thinking it was horrible, just that elements of it just didn't mesh with the overall story. Did you ever see Split?
I did.
Okay.
I thought it was okay. I thought James McAvoy was really impressive and menacing, and that was a fun performance, seeing him, you know, do all the different personalities. I thought when it veered into the Unbreakable universe, that felt desperate to me. It felt like M. Night Shyamalan just saying, "Remember when I made a good movie 20 years ago?" And sadly, no one in the theater seemed to know what was being referenced.
Yeah, okay. I've said this multiple times, but like, I like the closing moments of Split are like one of my favorite like theater experiences. Because of my reaction to it. I did not have that reaction that it was desperate at all. It was more a reaction of like, Shyamalan is a filmmaker who like I'm hot and cold on. I was a massive, massive fan in his heyday. Loved like everything up to probably The Village. I was an apologist for The Village, but after that, like Lady in the Water is where I kind of fell off. But I was a massive, massive fan. And then when I was in the theater for Split, I had heard like rumblings that like, oh, the ending is really good. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And then like throughout like the closing scenes, I was like, yeah, that was a pretty cool movie. And then I hear the music and I'm like, wow, did he get like, I think it was Thomas Newman back for the score or whoever? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's oh my God. And like, it legitimately blew my mind. And I was like, I turned to the person I saw it with, and I was like, we just saw an Unbreakable sequel. Like, what the fuck? And then theater was confused.
I'm delighted that you had that positive
Yeah.
experience, because mine was just sad.
Mhm.
Like, it was after the screening, I was with my friend and actually our fellow IFJA member, Joe Shearer,
Oh, yeah.
and he turned to this woman behind us and he was like, "Did you know what the ending was referencing?" And she had no clue. And it just felt sad. And like, but I'm delighted that it blew your mind. Like, I'm glad you had that experience, because
Yeah.
it seemed like that's what he was aiming for. So I guess for you it succeeded, which
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good. Now, I haven't revisited Split since I was prepping to watch Glass like a few years ago, but in the interim since then, and I don't know how, like, we got on this whole tangent, but anyway, and we'll get to the review, I promise. But like, I haven't revisited Split, but in the interim, he's had some movies that like Glass falls into this, but also Old is the big offender for me with like his weird like almost, I don't know if I would say bullying, but like weird antagonistic relationship with like mental disorders and like medical disorders. That it just like, it's so weird that he has so many characters in his canon where the villain aspect of a movie is predicated on a character having a real life, like developmental, or not developmental, but like a cognitive disability of some kind, like The Visit and Old and Glass and Split, kind of. It's weird.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it really pissed me off in Old. It really pissed me off in Old, because the guy, like, as they're aging, the guy starts getting like noticeable dementia, and that turns him into a villain. And I'm like, you've got to stop. Like, you have to, like, how just gross and offensive is that? It's just, ugh.
Well, what thought about that character is, as he slips into dementia, it suggests like dementia makes you racist, I guess.
Yeah. Like, what the hell? Yeah.
Yeah, and he becomes very violent, and yeah, it is like an exaggeration of. I mean, you could also chalk it up to Shyamalan maybe just having a fear of medical issues himself.
That's
and developing
true.
them. But then again, you have to consider the audience, and it's like, will they understand that he's exercising his own fears, or is this, oddly vilifying people with medical issues? Like, it's tricky territory.
Absolutely. And like, there's an IFC movie from a few years ago called Relic that I feel like I reviewed it with Mike on the podcast, but I'm very proud of that review. Go check it out if you're listening and want to check out that review. I don't remember the episode number offhand, but basically, Relic is about that kind of generational fear of hereditary illnesses, and it's like centered around, I believe, a mother and daughter who the grandmother of the family is like nearing the end of her life, and she has severe cognitive disabilities. And the way that manifests in the movie, from what I remember, is that like there's this interesting like monster effect, not necessarily monster effect, but this kind of haunting effect around the like aura of the grandmother, and it's reflected by how the fears of the daughter and the mother of the trio are fearful of what they feel like may be in store for them in their life. It's a very interesting movie. It's a very, very interesting horror movie that does that specific type of horror and fear much, much better than anything Shyamalan's done in that arena. So I recommend it.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been meaning to see Relic, so I'll check that out.
Yeah, I really liked it. But speaking of now that I have completely demolished your perfect segue into the review, let me try to recoup it with speaking of movies that I think are really, really good, let's go ahead and review Dream Scenario.
Great segue.
Thank you. So of course, this episode we're going to be reviewing Dream Scenario, and then later I'm going to be reviewing It's a Wonderful Knife with our second guest of the evening. But Dream Scenario, of course, we're going to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. So once we go into spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer. You can check the show notes for timestamps, all of that good stuff. Those show notes are in the podcast app you're using or at obsessiveviewer.com/OV405. And to bring us in, Dream Scenario, it is currently playing in theaters. The premise, according to IMDb, is a hapless family man finds his life turned upside down when millions of strangers suddenly start seeing him in their dreams. When his nighttime appearances take a nightmarish turn, Paul is forced to navigate his newfound stardom. This movie was written and directed by Christopher Borgli, and the cast includes Nicolas Cage, Julianne Nicholson, Tim Meadows, and Dylan Baker. Now, Sam, in non-spoilers, this movie, how did you feel about it? You wrote a very, very, very great review for Midwest Film Journal. And yeah, how did you feel about Dream Scenario?
I liked it much more than I expected to. I thought the trailers were charming, and I thought the concept was cool in kind of a Charlie Kaufman way. I loved the idea of an ordinary guy being kind of a Freddy Krueger phenomenon in that he's popping up in several people's dreams. But I didn't expect it to be such a compelling commentary on so many timely issues like identity, insecurity, the whole notion of cancel culture, social media, how the idea of celebrity has evolved to the point that we're all kind of seeking our own 15 minutes of fame, or at least just wanting constant attention through social media. I really, and this movie comments on all of that while also being hilarious.
Yeah.
I realize right now I'm making it sound kind of pretentious, but it's a blast. I describe it as like Charlie Kaufman by way of Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's kind of great comedy of discomfort. If you're into that sort of thing, so many cringeworthy moments. Nicolas Cage is great at playing a wormy, kind of off-putting guy that you can't help but feel for in the end. I just loved this movie, and it's one of my favorites of the year so far.
Same here, and this is going to be just a massive love fest for Dream Scenario. I had put in my notes like a direct quote from your review, the part where you said that it explores his Charlie Kaufman concept by way of Curb Your Enthusiasm as comedy of discomfort. It is so sharp, and it's so interesting that this movie is, like you said, it speaks volumes, as like you literally said, quote, the film speaks volumes about our current social media induced need for validation, even from those who love us unconditionally. Like that, the movie is such a unique exploration of not even like the nature of celebrity, and not even about like cancel culture or anything. It kind of pokes fun at the concept of cancel culture, and the people who are vocal about cancel culture, and how they are being silenced as they're shouting so loudly about it. But it's not like making much of a political statement. It is just this unique just exploration of identity and who we are versus who we want to be. And what I kind of really latched onto with Paul as a character was the way that he attempts with not much success to parlay this like attention that's focused on him into something that he wants, something that he desires, something that he wants and has been working for throughout his entire career, in the way that the world that he lives in and the world that he is, like, he's in the minds of millions and millions of people, and the world that they inhabit will not let him do the thing that he wants to do. And that's something I found just so, it's got like a little run of bleakness to it, and I guess nihilism a little bit, but it's just something that's it's kind of feels accurate. Like, it feels like we're living in a world where everything is available at a moment's notice, instant gratification, instant information just at our fingertips at all times. And everyone's competing for the same amount of attention or more attention than everyone else. And that's just bottlenecking all of our attention on bullshit. And then, like, when something breaks through where it captures everyone's attention, that individual does not have like a venue to do the thing that they want to do. I don't know. It's a fascinating movie. I loved it.
That's really interesting that you say, he doesn't get to do what he wants to do. It almost suggests that because of this instant gratification, we kind of expect things to fall in our laps. He talks about wanting to publish a book about ant intelligence, this very niche subject that he's devoted his professional life to, and he's a biology professor. And when he becomes famous, he wants to use that fame to kind of push the book. But what's funny is that he hasn't even written the book.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a perfect portrait of this world where people want to become famous for basically doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we take pictures of the meals we're about to eat and post them on Instagram and expect people to fall all over us, and that's basically doing nothing.
Right.
Like, you're just kind of living your mundane life and having lunch. But
Yeah.
it's like we turned that into an attention getting opportunity. So it's funny how this character who claims to not care about fame, once he gets it, he craves it, and he wants to get more of it by basically doing nothing.
Yep.
And
that's so interesting too, especially since, and of course we're not going to go into spoilers yet, but especially since the kind of the first like act, or first two acts even, like the I feel like intentionally so, the context of the dreams that he is inhabiting he is not being interactive. He is just, I think they describe him as like an extra in, I think, or maybe that was something I imagined, but I don't know, or dreamed, but, he's just kind of in the background. He's not reactive to anything going on in the dreams. And like, that is fascinating to me, because he is also in his own life someone, like you pointed out, he is someone who wants the acclaim and wants the success of having written a book about the thing that he's interested in, without doing any of the work, while postponing any work, and then also seeking out those who are doing the work and kind of taking an antagonistic approach to them in a very comical way. It's kind of brilliant in terms of satire and just at the character level. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned that it juggles a lot of ideas without really taking a firm stance on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see where some people might view that as a criticism or presented it as a criticism, but I actually think that's one of the movie's strengths. It presents all of these ideas about social media, celebrity, cancel culture, and just kind of leaves it up to you to explore them. I would argue that dreams do the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they present a lot of random ideas, and we have to make sense of them.
Yeah.
So I think the movie kind of perfectly mirrors the nature of dreaming in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Like right from even in a visual context, the way that the movie is edited together and the way that the dream sequences are showcased is so, I don't want to say subtly because it's not very subtle, but it's very much pointed to the fact that these are fragmented like memories and picture movies that are playing in our brains. Like it's so interesting, like just right from the jump. And then it escalates from there, obviously, but also in the way that it's depicted. So like it opens with the first like dream we see is his daughter dreaming of him just standing there as things are happening in the scene. And then from there, we like, as we get more like deep into the movie, there's a scene where he is asking his class, what have they dreamed about him? He's asking them for what is going on like in their dreams. And it's such an interesting like mix of visual and audio in that the students will be talking to him, and the scene will cut to the dream landscape and their narration, like voiceover, and then it will just transition into like their full dream. And it's so interesting to me because also there's a scene where he is confronting a former colleague, and taping recording the audio of it. And he has this whole idea in his brain, and he has these expectations of what he wants to do, like how confrontational he wants to be, but it doesn't go that way. And then he plays back the tape as the scene is cutting back to their conversation with the audio of the tape. And maybe it's just me being such a goober about audio stuff, but like that, I was just like, that is just so brilliant as a means to just get into his mindset and reflect it to like the world's mindset as they dream about him. I don't know. I really like that.
Well said. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great point about that scene.
Yeah. And I don't want to read your full review on the podcast, but I do want to just highlight, my God, that opening paragraph of your review is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. Like, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and read that part, and then I promise I won't like audio plagiarize your work or anything. But, you said, before social media, most of us weren't as constantly worried about our public image or brand. We'd go to school or work more to function than to build a life that looked appealing from the outside. But now people can get an impression of our lives and personalities without engaging with us in person, forming, and this is like my favorite part, forming a Frankenstein's monster from the photos and comments we share in our online profiles. Facebook and Instagram users scroll through digital proof of our day-to-day existence the same way we eagerly flip through tabloid spreads of celebrities caught getting coffee or going grocery shopping. While ordinary people used to crave seeing these larger-than-life figures brought down to earth, we normies now yearn to be considered extraordinary. Like, as a thesis statement and as like a breakdown of like what the kind of themes of this movie are, it's brilliantly, beautifully said. So yeah, I really like that.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot to me. Do you mind if I kind of talk about why I wrote that?
No, yeah, go right ahead. Of course.
So, I just, as wormy and off-putting as he is, I think Nicolas Cage's character is also really relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have his level of insecurity, and I think the fact that people are dreaming about him kind of makes him want to validate his own life the way that the existence of social media seems to make us want to validate our own lives. It's like, well, we have this means of getting attention, so we try to see if we're actually worthy of the attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of his journey here. People are dreaming about him, seemingly randomly, but, is his life on its own worthy of that attention? And I think that's kind of a beautiful journey that's really timely right now. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
I feel like I'm rambling.
No, not at all. I totally agree. And it's something that I want to make a stupid joke, but like, as someone who's been podcasting for 10 years, check out my TikTok that I've been starting doing for the last 6 months. But anyway, but no, yeah, like that is something it's so interesting the way that this movie juxtaposes, compares or contrasts, this completely innocuous, catapult to stardom, completely, inactive catapult. So he does have these hopes and dreams. He does have these goals in his life and ways that he wants to be viewed as extraordinary. And he becomes the center of the world's attention through literally zero fault of his own. And I found that to be such an interesting way to explore the ideas of identity as it relates to, I don't want to say celebrity, because he's not doing anything to be a celebrity, but he's center stage on the world stage. And I just find it so interesting how, I know I said this before, but how he is trying to capitalize on that and then not being successful, and what that says about who he is or what he thinks of himself. And it's such a rich character study of this that I am so happy that it didn't go into much detail as to why it's happening. It was all about what happens in this case, and I just thought that was the best way to tell the story.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and it kind of works on a meta level too. Nicolas Cage himself lately is kind of the, I don't know, I guess you could say, victim of the same sort of phenomenon in the fact that, people see GIFs or memes of just his face, and they spread through, and those memes and GIFs spread through the internet like wildfire. And that's kind of the same thing that happens in this movie. This guy is just showing up, not really doing anything, but him showing up is becoming an epidemic. And I don't know. I think that's, that speaks to the internet as well. People just pop up out of nowhere and you don't really know why, but it's you take some random image and it's that's famous.
Yeah, it's that's a really good point. Just the viral aspect of it all. And just yesterday, so this is another tangent. It's about, TikTok and social media. But anyway, months ago, within the past 3 months, I think, there was on TikTok this couple that like they posted a TikTok that was like a cringy, just really kind of just overly cringy thing where it was like it was a couple and the wife was like, do you want to see the cringiest couple thing ever? It's called a love surge. It's where like my husband gets so energetic and has all this love in his body and everything. And, like he's in the background like shaking and everything. And then she's like, yeah, he needs to just let it all out. So then we call it a love surge, and he wraps his arms around her, and then they start like convulsing, like fake convulsing and everything, because it's all the love and everything. It's cute, but it's so cringy, and like people were stitching that and duetting it and stuff. Like one, and like it was just making fun of them for this cute little goofy thing. And like I didn't make fun of them on the platform at all, but like I did laugh at like one in particular was like a very, very kind of mean-spirited one that I felt bad about laughing at, because later she had posted a video saying like she was like in tears, like saying like, I don't know why people are so mean about it. We even said it was cringy. But the thing that I laughed about was this guy was just very calmly, he saw it and then he stitched it and he just said, I hope they're related. I hope they find out that they were related. And then he starts talking about that for a while, and I was just like, that's pretty funny. But anyway, I say all of that because that was months ago. And just yesterday, I saw a very funny TikTok where it was a couple at a Christmas tree, like, store, Christmas tree place that they go to buy Christmas trees.
Sure.
Lot. Yeah. The Christmas tree store. And it was a couple, and the wife said, we're at a Christmas tree lot, and my husband is taking the opportunity to act like he is to act like we're in a cheesy Hallmark Christmas movie. And the husband is just like, he has like this affectation on his voice, and he's like, well, look who it is. How's the big city treating you? Yeah, me and my dad, we run this Christmas tree lot, but you know, we might lose it this year. And like, he just keeps going with that. It's very like cliched Hallmark stuff. And I realized like after sharing that, I was just like, that's the same couple. That's a love surge couple. And it was just weird how people just pop up and go away and then pop up again. Anyway, follow me on TikTok at OV Podcasts.
Well, that's funny. The idea of how things can go well and how they can go horribly wrong when you attach meaning to them. You can now, because of this meme culture, you can take a random picture and just somehow make it mean-spirited or make it positive. Like, and the same thing kind of happens to Nicolas Cage in this movie. Horrible things happen when people try to attach meaning to this phenomenon of him showing up in dreams. Like, I won't go into it too much to avoid spoilers, but
right.
Like a PR firm latches onto him and tries to get him to sell stuff, and it's kind of sleazy, and he kind of toys with the notion of becoming sort of a corporate sellout, and it's he just. It suggests that we have too much power at our fingertips when it comes to attaching meaning to these kind of random things.
Oh, absolutely. And it's this, like that the whole PR part of it, the PR company is like it was such an interesting window into the capitalist society that we live in, the consumers, all of that social commentary. That's wrapped up in, again, the sense of identity, and also the way that the movie kind of leans into kind of cancel culture, but kind of in a neutral sense. But the PR firm is brilliant at satirizing how the world responds to something like that, and how the response is, generate revenue for mega corporations, and then also dangle like dangle a carrot of potentially meeting someone wildly famous that I won't spoil, but they're not in the movie, but I won't spoil it. But it's such an interesting kind of way to meld like business and PR stuff into, again, the whole idea is that like he the only thing he wants to capitalize on with this is to make a book. Like it's so yeah, and there are other things that we'll talk about in spoilers, but it's just really interesting how just the unassuming guy gets catapulted into stardom through literally no intervention of his own making, and how the movie plays out on that front. I don't know. I really loved it. And Nicolas Cage was phenomenal. Like we mentioned it, but like he has had such a, obviously like he's done a wide swath of different types of performances over his career, but when he does these introspective, like actory roles like this, or like Pig a couple of years ago, it's just like incredible. And here in this movie, he's able to be a little bit Nicolas Cagey, but he still keeps it toned down or honed into what the character is going through, and ties it so well to the just goofiness inherent within the character. I don't know. I adored his performance in this movie.
Yeah, me too. He, that's a good point, that, he keeps the character grounded, because he adds a lot of, kind of outlandish tics to the character. Mm-hmm. He has kind of a nerdy, nasally voice. It's a lot like the voice he does in Peggy Sue Got Married. Mm. He's kind of comically bald, sort of a cartoonish Larry David-esque character from the outside, but like by the end, your heart breaks for the guy.
Oh yeah.
And he's still very relatable. And I wrote in my review a little bit that I could easily see people dismissing this character based on how off-putting he is, and kind of openly desperate for approval and attention, and I would argue aren't we all to some degree? Especially because of social media. So, and it's refreshing to see a complex character that you root for one minute, and then just hold your head in shame for the other. It's refreshing to see complex characters like that really challenge the audience. It's one of my favorite performances of the year.
Yeah, same here. And let's go into spoilers. Are you ready for spoilers?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. Let's go into spoilers for Dream Scenario. Like I said, I'll play a clip from the trailer. If you haven't seen Dream Scenario, it is currently playing in theaters right now, and definitely go see it. Come back and listen to the spoiler review, and check the show notes to navigate timestamps to skip around the spoilers if you want to continue listening. But we are going to go ahead and spoil Dream Scenario after this clip from the trailer.
There's like 100 messages. Somebody wants to interview me.
This is strange. Maybe you should take a minute and think before you do anything drastic.
Why me? I don't know. I'm special, I guess.
How does it feel to go viral?
Who's actually had a dream about me?
All right, so spoilers on for Dream Scenario, and something I want to kind of touch on in spoilers is the way that, I don't know if this was necessarily the intention of the movie, or if this is something that I'm just kind of grasping onto, but The attempt at infidelity and the level to which he reaches at infidelity with the young woman whose name I can't remember, that kind of made me think that the movie was intending to signify that maybe that's the switch that causes the dreams to skew into nightmare, and that's what turns everyone against him. I don't know how, since the movie is so reluctant to explain anything as to why the phenomenon's happening. I do think that it could go either way, but how did you feel about that section of the movie, and how and if it caused, the downfall of Paul Matthews as a celebrity?
That's interesting. Until you brought it up, I hadn't really considered the infidelity to be the catalyst, but that makes sense because, he starts off as kind of a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really judge him because he's neutral in these dreams. He's just there. He's not really doing anything or affecting anything. But once he starts showing his raw humanity and his flaws, that's when there's a downward spiral. And I think that is sort of a commentary on the kind of warts and all, tell-all culture surrounding celebrity that we have now. These celebrities used to just be movie stars, but now we get to see them as, normal people with normal people who make mistakes and have flaws and say cringy things and do things we don't approve of. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I once he starts doing some things that aren't so savory, people view him in this negative light and they're kind of traumatized by him. And we were kind of traumatized by the Will Smith slap.
Yeah.
From the recent Oscars. Before that, we just saw Will Smith as a movie star, someone we enjoyed, and he did something ugly and surprising, and it was kind of a gut punch. And now I think there's this stigma surrounding Will Smith, and we kind of associate him with this ugly act of violence, and we can't help it. And I think people in Dream Scenario have a similar relationship with Nicolas Cage's character.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good comparison too. The thing I was going to bring up that was the kind of real world, not equivalent to it, but I want to mention, not to veer too off topic here, but I agree with everything you said also. But something that I kind of latched onto regarding the PR firm and the pivot from innocuous streaming to nightmare was that, like, I love how it goes from, we can even get you, like, if you can get into like Obama's dreams, like that can be a huge thing and you can meet Obama and all that. And then like after the pivot, it's like, we can book you on Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's funny that it suggests, there is still an audience for people who are hated.
Exactly.
Too.
And that's kind of something I felt was sadly enough, that like interchange in the movie is I'm sure going to be and has been timeless. But it's particularly interesting in recent times because that on a smaller scale, that's kind of what's happened to the stand-up comic Matt Rife, who got super viral and famous by posting crowd work on TikTok, and then got a big tour and then a stand-up special on Netflix, and then got immediately canceled because he made unsavory jokes, but also because those unsavory jokes were stuff that I was hearing on like Xbox game chats when I was like 17, 18, and I'm 37, but anyway, so like he has now pivoted to like being someone, like his response to the outcry was like to post a very tasteless Instagram story where he had a link that said, click this link if you were offended by any of my jokes, and it was a link to Special Needs Helmets, height of comedy. But he has like since then gone on to like Jordan Peterson's podcast and talked about cancel culture and all of that. It's like, it's not cancel culture. It's just you're an idiot who got, famous for being a thirst trap on TikTok. And then shocker, you don't have an actual like refined comedy set. Like who, yeah, it's,
well,
anyway.
it's funny. You can't say that cancel culture exists when these people still have an audience.
Exactly.
It's like they obviously haven't been canceled.
No.
Yeah. And what's funny about that idea coming up in Dream Scenario is that it's not like these were willing viewers of these Nicolas Cage dreams.
Exactly.
He was just kind of imposed upon them. So, maybe it's saying something there about these celebrities that are just kind of imposed upon us. It's like,
yeah,
the Kardashians have a reality show and you wonder, well, why exactly?
Yeah.
What did they do? It's like they're famous for being famous.
Yep.
The Nicolas Cage's character kind of goes through the same thing.
Absolutely. It's funny because this movie can kind of be like the positioning of Paul as someone that's in everyone's dreams can be like summed up by like a common thing that is said online about like people who become internet famous, and like it, like to the point where it reaches outside of whatever bubble of internet fame they're in. So another kind of, YouTuber or like scandal thing was Colleen Ballinger, who did some, like she was YouTube famous for several years doing a weird goofy character. She got a massive following, and then years later she got canceled because it came out that she was grooming a lot of her younger fans and speaking very inappropriately to them and doing all of these things. And then she did the dumbest thing you can imagine by playing a ukulele and making a weird, like, non-apology video, playing the ukulele, claiming that all of the allegations against her were just part of the toxic gossip train. But the common thing that I saw was that, and I am guilty of having this feeling, was that a lot of people were like, everything that I've learned about Colleen Ballinger has been against my will. Because it's outside of that sphere of like that particular YouTuber's demographic. And since it blew up, it's like everyone knows about this person. It's like, I learned this against my will. I didn't want to learn anything about this person's work. And that's kind of what, like, on a global scale, that's what Dream Scenario is doing for Paul. And I think it's just such a meaty thing to throw at the audience. It's so good. It's so freaking good.
That's interesting because you're right. It's like we have these Freddy Krueger type celebrities who were just imposed upon us. We didn't seek them out.
Exactly.
They're just kind of in our subconscious now. What's funny about the Colleen Ballinger incident too is that she still benefited and gained fame even while she was so-called canceled. Like, I think that song she did, the non-apology song, was actually on iTunes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and I believe that the common thing that was said was that she presumably intentionally made the video over 10 minutes long, because that's how long you need a video to be to have it monetized on YouTube.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I think she recently released another apology video. And it's like, she's obviously not canceled. She still has a broadcast.
Yeah, she has a platform. She, yeah. It's, this world's weird. But to get back to the movie, though, there were several moments that just kind of blew my mind. But one that just like I audibly gasped was that as the movie's going, as the fallout is happening, as he is experiencing all of these experiences as a result of things that he is, that a projection of him is doing in people's subconscious, he is still like, he's facing a backlash through no fault of his own. And then the moment when he goes to the school to see his daughter's like rehearsal or whatever, and like the shock, and just like the shock of him accidentally injuring the woman, I was like, oh my God, like that felt like it opened everything up. And it was just like, I was as kind of morally gray as the character is, I guess, or as I think that there's a complexity to Paul as a character, that he does some bad things. The infidelity thing is not a good thing to do. It is dishonest. It's immoral, all of that. But throughout the movie, the reaction of the public is not something that is a reaction to something he has actually done to them in the real world. And then to have something happen that is, by all accounts, a situation that comes up by accident, but through a heated confrontation, is weirdly terrifying in its own way. And I do kind of wish that the movie would have expanded on that a little bit, or done some more with that, because then it just pivots to kind of like a 2 weeks later thing. But I don't know. How did you feel about that part of it?
That's really interesting. I think those are great points about that scene, because earlier in the movie, it harps on the idea that he's not voluntarily doing anything harmful to these people. He happens to be doing harmful things in their dreams, but of course that's not in his control. And then you see him in a moment that is in his control, and it goes horribly wrong, and he ends up hurting someone. And I think that's just kind of a heartbreaking commentary on, just the fact that we're all human. We're all capable of doing bad things, getting into arguments that become too heated, that maybe turn violent. I think if anything, the most important thing that the movie really says is that, none of us are innocent. We're all capable of these things that can alienate us and turn people against us. I'm sure we've all said cringy things like Paul. We've all been, openly desperate, insecure assholes. I'm sure people out there are getting mad right now. They're like, well, I'm not. I'm perfect. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's what's so beautiful about this movie. It's saying, we're all human. We're all, this can happen to anyone.
Absolutely. And it reaches kind of a completely heartbreaking finale where he is separated from his wife, and he's trying to get information about her new relationship, or trying to figure out like where she stands with this coworker. And then just the end where like it pivots to that consumerism thing with the Norio thing. which I think in and of itself, the idea that a corporation or an inventor of some kind would capitalize on this interesting, like, new, like, technology or new, like, knowledge of, like, shared dream space and everything to create something that is like forcing advertising into our subconscious. I think that that's enough for, like, I would see a sequel or spin-off movie that explored that, because what a goldmine of just insanity of satire that could be. But the way that the talking heads thing comes to pass at the end to close out the movie is, I think, just the perfect summation to leave it on, and the perfect kind of just closing sentiment that he wants to get back with his wife. It's, I don't know, it's very sweet and heartbreaking in its own right.
I'm glad you mentioned the wife character, because I wanted to talk about her as well. There's another brief but heartbreaking moment where he's talking with her about his meeting that he had with the PR firm, and he's saying, you know, they're going to try to get me to meet Obama and show up in Obama's dreams, and, you know, I might get to sell Sprite. And he's just desperately seeking her approval, which he never thought to seek before this dream phenomenon. And she says, "You don't need to impress me. I love you." And I think that's a commentary on this kind of approval we seek in social media that we didn't used to quite as intensely as before. It's like, you know, now we're waiting to see if friends and family members like our status, and it's like, well, they love us. Yeah. Like, why does it fucking matter if someone likes the status? I don't mean to denigrate social media too much. I mean, I'm as much of an addict of social media as anyone else, but I do think the movie through the dream concept is kind of suggesting that we need to sort of take it easy on ourselves in terms of this insecurity that that social media is causing. And, you know, it's the same kind of insecurity that the dream phenomenon causes for the Paul character. And yeah, that's well said. And I feel like there's a comparison in my brain that this movie reminds me of one of my favorite movies of the last 12 years or so. Spike Jonze's Her. And like, I keep thinking about this movie in relation to that movie, in particular the scene in Her when Joaquin Phoenix is walking across like a crowded sidewalk, and he's having an emotional conversation with Scarlett Johansson over obviously the earpiece and everything, and like he stumbles and falls, and then everyone around him is focused on their phones, and it does not pay any attention to them, to him, or his clearly like emotionally devastating situation that he's in. And I think that that's such an interesting counter, like when you compare like Dream Scenario to Her, and the way that it is exploring this sense of loneliness through different prisms. So like Her has loneliness through just lack of human connection, and then Dream Scenario explores these senses of loneliness that we feel while we are hyper connected to everything, or have this like false connection with so many people at any given time over like the internets. And also, I love every single one listening to this podcast, and please subscribe. But yeah, I think that that's like these. I feel like there's like a niche subgenre of movie that explores this type of thing, and I think Dream Scenario, like, I can't wait to see it again, because I'm gonna reassess it. And like, I rated it 4.5 stars, and it might bump up to a 5, and it might take the crown on my top 10. We'll see. I just want to say, I think that's a great point about loneliness amid being hyper connected and but having these kind of false connections. I think a perfect portrait of that is when Paul is standing in his classroom and there are a ton of students holding their hands waiting to talk about their dreams of him, and it's probably the loneliest he's ever been.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just a perfect portrait of like these false connections that he's surrounded by.
Absolutely. And just it's like it is, and the movie explores this in a variety of ways, but it's like this exploration of this unassuming man who, like anyone, wants to be extraordinary, wants to be like you said in your review, we normies now yearn to be considered extraordinary. And like, it is just this feeling of insecurity that's born out of bearing witness to people who are doing extraordinary things, or are putting up the facade of doing extraordinary things, or doing things that are exceptional, or are having like a brighter spotlight than billions of other people on the planet have for even a brief window of time. So like having this depiction of this man who feels like it's not even necessarily that he feels like he has something worth being exceptional about him aside from the Ant book, but like the fact that he just kind of stumbles and he isn't like, even in like this movie is such a fucking amazing movie. But like having these like deep-seated insecurities and then having the world see you in specific ways that are beyond your control. And like, even with the infidelity stuff, or with the scene where he is reenacting the dream with the woman, I wish I knew her name because I feel like shitty just saying like the woman, but with her, it's just such an interesting thing, because even though he is willfully doing something that is breaking his marriage vows and is something that is it is something that is wrong, morally wrong in relation to his marriage, he is also failing miserably and hilariously with the fart and ejaculation and fart scene. But he's failing at living up to expectations that were not set by his behavior. And it's just so interesting that, like, even when you have the spotlight on you, like, you can't live up to people's expectations of you, whether that be in a sexual fantasy or in, like, you know, potentially murdering them. Like, it's such an interesting dive into, like, insecurity and also just the need to be exceptional, even if you're not. So, yeah.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, talking this out, I really think this might be a 5-star movie for me.
It's great. Just watching, like, your, you know, the last few minutes that you just spoke. It's great seeing that, because it's a reminder that this is one of those movies that just gets you so excited to talk about. Like,
yeah,
there's so much to unpack, and it's the kind of movie where you'll just find yourself thinking about it, and when you try to talk about it with friends, you're like, oh, and there's this thing, and there's that, and there's this idea, and this moment's great. And you know, that it's always exciting to find movies that provoke that kind of response.
Absolutely. And the kind of underlying hilarious thing about all of this is that this is the main review of an episode in which the secondary review is going to be for fucking It's a Wonderful Knife, which is not going to elicit the same passion that Dream Scenario did.
They can't all be winners.
No, they can't. But yeah, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, because we both have screeners we have to watch and we have movies to watch. Kind of to close out the review, any other things that we didn't touch on with the review, or any other thoughts you wanted to get out about it?
No, I thought we covered it pretty well. Yeah, this one will probably end up in my top 5.
Nice.
I loved it. And no, I would
Nice.
just highly recommend this one.
Absolutely. Same here. And for the listeners, Sam, would you mind telling them where they can find your work online and where they can find you on social media so that they can dream about you and cancel you?
Yeah, you can find my film writing on MidwestFilmJournal.com. I have a review up right now of Dream Scenario, and of another movie that just started streaming on Netflix December. You can find me at letterboxd.com/SamMovieMan. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and yeah, maybe I'll turn up in your dreams as well.
You already have, Sam. You already have.
Creepy.
Very. No, but thank you so much for joining me for this review of Dream Scenario. Like we said, it is currently in theaters. Highly, highly recommend it. And Sam, I'm definitely going to be asking you to come back on at some point. Obviously, I have a whole roster of movies I want to review, and I know that I have you marked down to potentially come on in January to review Night Swim.
Oh yes, can't wait.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for that. So. All right. So, peek behind the curtain. This is the first time that I'm doing a primary review and then recording a secondary review separate. So I don't know what a clean transition is going to be like, but coming up next on the podcast, I'm going to be reviewing It's a Wonderful Knife with my friend and colleague, Brent Leuthold. So stay tuned for that. And Sam, thank you so much for joining us on The Obsessive Viewer. I'll have links to all of Sam's stuff in the show notes of the episode. Yeah, stay tuned for It's a Wonderful Knife, and Sam, thank you again.
Thank you.
They tell me I view obsessively.
And now joining me for our secondary review this week is my friend and IFJA colleague, Brent Leuthold, whose written reviews and podcasts can be found at awakeinthedark.com. And to give another plug for Midwest Film Journal's Samuel L. Jackson essay series, Brent's contribution to the Hold On to Your Butts series will be an essay about Black Snake Moan, I believe. Yeah. So Brent, welcome back to the show, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. And yeah, I'm right. I did a write-up on Black Snake Moan, and that's going to be out next Monday, the 11th, I believe. I think that's the date. So yeah, it should be next Monday morning.
Very nice. I am very excited about just the whole series and everything. I mentioned previously in this episode that I'm going to be contributing an essay about Unbreakable. And I was going to do a whole thing where I was like, dang, Brent, you just missed Sam. He just left. But I do want to say up top that I have this dumb note scripted out, but I messed up. Earlier in the episode, I made a reference to her in our spoiler review of Dream Scenario. In that review, I referenced a scene in which Joaquin Phoenix falls down and people around him are glued to their phones and not conscious of him being around. That's actually the reverse. He falls down and everyone around him swarms and asks if he's okay, and he ignores everyone because he is frantically trying to get connected to Sam, his OS lover, which is the name of my pop album that'll be coming out this winter.
Your K-pop album, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So Brent, today, this secondary review is about It's a Wonderful Knife, and then we're going to do a non-spoiler review, and I'll play a clip from the trailer to bring us into the review proper. But basically, we're going to do a brief-ish non-spoiler review of It's a Wonderful Knife, which is currently streaming on Shudder, following a run in theaters, and then we'll probably end with a little bit of potpourri to round out the episode. So to bring us into the review, I am going to go ahead and play a clip from the trailer, except I'm first going to ask Brent, what have you been up to lately in terms of reviewing, and where can people find your work online and on social media?
awakeinthedark.com is still the best place. I'm on Facebook, X, Twitter X, Threads, Instagram, Letterboxd.
There you go.
Get it. I got all of them. I'm not going to go through all the names because they're slightly different, but just look for Awake in the Dark and they're probably on there.
Oh yeah.
I did a review of Dream Scenario for What's Up, which is online now, and it'll be in What's Up this week.
Nice.
And the aforementioned Black Snake Moan essay is going to be up next week at Midwest Film Journal. Besides that, I've just been buried under screeners, buried under screener discs, and then digitally buried under digital screeners.
Yeah. Same here. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It truly is.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's awesome. So that's great. With your weekly reviews and stuff, do you take a break for the holidays, or do you have stuff pumping out the rest of the year?
We usually have to work around them, but usually I think usually for Christmas they kind of just take off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's potentially one. I think that Christmas is on a Monday. So I don't know. I'm not sure what they'll do, but usually it's 1 week off, something like that.
Nice.
But other than that, I in the past I've definitely done top 10s. I think sometimes I've done the year ahead sort of things, or in the past I've done stuff that's coming out in the holidays or whatever, but that's sort of already passed. So sometimes I'll do stuff like that if nothing super big is coming out. But other than that, pretty much just truck along.
Yeah.
Not too many breaks. So
nice. I usually don't necessarily do a written top 10. I think I have the last year or two, and every time it comes basically what happens is that I see a lot of our colleagues in the IFJA posting their end of year list, and I'm like, I'm going to join in. Because I usually wait until middle of January to release the year in review episode of the podcast. But I kind of want to get something published, so written and everything. So I'll probably do that in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a good year, I think.
Yeah, usually by the end of December, that's when I'll sort of know if there's anything else that I'll need to have seen to really feel like I'll feel good about putting out a list.
Mm-hmm.
So usually that's at the end of December, I'm pretty much well, is that it? And then if not, then I'll maybe wait into January and then just sort of see, where stuff goes.
Yeah.
Before I had access, we had access to, such lovely screeners that we get.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Phantom Thread came out it was 2017, but it was going into 2018.
Yeah.
And it didn't play in Fort Wayne until late January 2018. So that episode is actually I think in early February of 2018. That was I think it was the very first episode we did.
Oh, nice.
Because that was when I'm I have to wait on that. And of course, glad I did. But we're lucky that we don't. Usually by December we will have seen most of the stuff. And there's of course the big names or whatever, your IndieWires and your Rolling Stones.
Yes.
They have already published stuff this week. So,
right.
So I think is a bit premature, but
a little bit. Yeah. But really at this point, it's in terms of top 10s, and I know that no one's really seen it yet, but really I feel like Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire is the one to beat.
This is what I'm talking about.
It's their game to
lose. You gotta wait till
exactly.
You gotta wait until at least mid-December, because that's coming out the 22nd or something.
I think so.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's all over my calendar. I know it's the 22nd, obviously.
That title, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, I'm sorry, you just said it, but
it is
Rebel Moon
Part 1, a Child of Fire.
Child of Fire.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And then I guess in April the Part 2 is coming out. I think that's what is on the calendar, so we'll see. But yeah. It's
gonna compete with Dune, I guess.
Yeah. Jesus. But speaking of I don't know, children of fire and like they're children in a fireplace.
This is going to be a good segue. I don't know what it is, but I'm looking forward to it.
Let's review It's a Wonderful Knife. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from the trailer, and then I'll bring us into our review of It's a Wonderful Knife. Once again, it is streaming on Shudder as of December 1st, 2023, and it had a little run in theaters. So here's a clip from the trailer for It's a Wonderful Knife.
Waters? Last Christmas still haunts me.
Time to let that go.
No one cares. Everyone would be better off if I was never born. Did you see that? Did the power go out? Oh my god. I stood under the aurora and said everyone would be better off if I never existed. Well, wish granted.
So the premise, according to IMDb, is after saving her town from a psychotic killer, Winnie Carruthers' life is less than wonderful. When she wishes she'd never been born, she finds herself in a nightmare parallel universe where without her, things could be much, much worse. Director for this movie was Tyler McIntyre, and writer was Michael Kennedy. And the cast includes Jane Widdop, Joel McHale, Justin Long, Jess McLeod, and Catherine Isabel. So Brent, it's funny. We talked about, screeners and being very, this is the busy time of year as we kind of watch as many movies as we can. Why did you watch this?
That's a good question. I knew it was coming out in theaters last month, and honestly, part of it may have been a little bit of Thanksgiving hangover.
Thanksgiving the holiday or Thanksgiving the movie?
Thanksgiving the movie, meaning slashers are really cool.
Yeah.
This one surely will be. And so it was in theaters kind of around the same time as that. And then I knew it was having a quick release to Shudder. We still have AMC Plus because I forgot to cancel our membership. That's like 75% of it. That's why we watched it. But
nice.
I like the Christopher Landon sort of Happy Death Day movies, freaky sort of, doing something a little more with horror kind of slasher. And I didn't even see the trailer. I just saw I just saw the title basically, and I was like, okay, well, probably somehow this is going to be incorporated with the Frank Capra 1945 46 movie. So anyway, it was on. It was on. That is the succinct answer to your question. We were channel surfing and it was on.
That is totally fair. So I chose to watch this movie, and it planned out, since it was coming to Shudder, I planned out reviewing it for the podcast, and that was more out of curiosity because I too am kind of a fan of this recent trend of slasher movies that kind of have some kind of fantasy or other fantasy movie reference to them, I guess, creative edge to it, where like you referenced Freaky and Happy Death Day, and then there was another one that came out Totally Killer.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is an interesting spin on the slasher genre, which is a genre that I really like, and it's something that I came of age as a movie fan because of Scream and blah, blah, blah. You guys all know all about that. But it's just an interesting spin on it. So having said that, I was curious about this movie. And then watching it, I just felt like it was just so lifeless to me. It felt very lazy and just slapped together. And we'll dig into it a little bit, but basically, I felt like at every turn, the slasher aspects of it were very just kind of rote and not very kinetic or energetic. We'll talk about that staircase scene that
oh yeah,
it infuriated me for a couple of reasons, but we'll get to that. But
I'm pretty sure there was an owl that came down and was picking at the killer's scalp. Oh wait, no, that's a different thing. Never mind.
But that like the slasher aspects were not good. And then even like the It's a Wonderful Life spin on it wasn't engaging at all. Like this felt, it's kind of funny because it reminded me a little bit of an extrapolation of the feeling I had when watching The Exorcist Believer, in that it felt like, oh, like with that, we said it on the podcast that Exorcist Believer felt like, oh, David Gordon Green was very successful with the Halloween trilogy, so they gave him an assignment to do The Exorcist, and that's what it felt like. This feels like, hey, there's a trend of fantasy slasher movies that play off of established concepts in popular things, so let's do our own. Let's do this one. And it feels like an assignment, and it just does not cut it for me. No pun intended.
Yeah, I was thinking of Totally Killer as well, because even though it's not like a Christopher Landon one necessarily, that also isn't a thing. I think that's a more successful movie than It's a Wonderful Knife. But that one was on Prime, I think, in October. So like it literally felt like Shudder was like, oh, like people like that when fun stuff comes to, to streaming. So let's just quick, it's like they could have made this in 6 weeks. Like, I really don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not technically because I'm being cheeky anyway, but regardless, it was funny because when I was watching this with Aubrey, I was like, right as the credits were right as it was starting up. And she was like, oh, this is on Shudder. That's cool. And I was like, yeah, I was actually in theaters like a few weeks ago too. And as we were watching the movie, she was like, this was in theaters? Like basically meaning like this feels like straight to streaming.
Yeah,
and
it really does.
It does. And it's like, I'd probably feel pretty ripped off if I saw it in theaters. Like, this is not what Nicole Kidman sent us to the movies for.
No. Yeah, it's really, like I said, it just feels very lazy, and it doesn't feel like there's any passion to it. Even when like you consider the It's a Wonderful Life aspect of it, that just feels so perfunctory to everything. And it's like, it's not so much that it's not believable as a concept, of course, but it's more like they're trying to do the self-referential meta thing with that. So like, it's like, will you be my Clarence? Yeah, I'll be your Clarence. And it's like, yeah, that's fun. That's whatever. But like, I also feel like there's like nothing like, okay, here's the thing. And I'm not trying to compare this movie to It's a Wonderful Life, because they're not comparable, of course. But when you consider It's a Wonderful Life, one of the reasons
they have really similar titles.
They do, yes. Yes. One of the the strongest thing about It's a Wonderful Life, one of the strongest things about it is that, George Bailey is at the end of his rope and he tries to kill himself. And that's the impetus of that. And It's a Wonderful Knife, it's like, well, my brother got a truck and I didn't get into college. I didn't get into college. Also, people were killed last year. And it's like, there isn't enough of it feels like it's such a lazy setup for her to say, I wish I was never born.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So
and there's two things. I won't spoil anything, but there's two things in the ending. Well, one I mean, whatever. This isn't a spoiler. Sorry, spoiler for It's a Wonderful Life or any movie that is copied it since, including this one, of course.
Yeah.
So basically, what you said is, it's basically a lack of stakes. You don't have the sort of character depth. So when you have essentially the sort of next day, or like a Christmas Carol, sort of when you have the next day and things sort of go back to normal, then you're like, you probably should have that should have just been your normal next day. Because let's face it, like, I understand you've gone through this journey, but like, stuff wasn't really quite that bad for you. So I agree with you definitely on that point for number one. Number two, I don't want to spoil anything. There's something really mean-spirited. There's kind of a rug pull. I'm referring to the very, very last line in interaction. Okay. I'll just say that. And it has to do essentially with like, oh, are things back to normal or not, sort of. Anyway.
Okay.
Point is, there's something, it's kind of gross and ugly. And I think it sends the movie off in a really, anyway, it kind of crumbles before that anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but it kind of bothered me because, again, it gets back to a sort of like the stakes and like the bridge and someone being at their wits. Anyway. Yeah. So those are just two things with the very ending, trying not to dance around it. But it falls apart before then. And it's one of those things where it's like, it takes a classic that like, that doesn't have to explain all of its mythology, and yet it's like, well, it does in this because they have to keep spinning their, because this is not a movie about characters at all. It's about the situation, this essentially sci-fi, situation, or whatever. So all these things they have to. Anyway, it falls apart from that side of it, especially. Oh, that's absolutely. Where it gets pretty messy.
Yeah, and like as a slasher aspect to it, as the slasher aspect to it is kind of unveiled throughout it, it also kind of shoots itself in the foot by making the entire prologue be like the setup of the slasher, the angel killer person. And then this isn't really a spoiler, but we get we learn a lot about that particular killer and that particular individual. And then that just kind of saps any like fun slasher whodunit things about it going forward. And it's not that that's needed in a slasher for me, but when there's such an absence of literally anything else compelling about the movie, it kind of just didn't do anything for me. Cause I'm like, okay, well, the characters know who they're going after or who's going after them. They know like all of these things, and they try to do some light
Nancy Drewing and like pulling the rug out from under you and that. Sure. But it's like, it's all like very too little too late. And then there's a whole other element at the end. Like it's a mess. This movie is it gets more complicated for sure.
Yeah.
Prior to the title card, which is, basically the other is basically, well, you see who the serial killer was, we can say, right before the title card. And it's, for me, again, I want to give this movie the benefit of the doubt. And I thought that was kind of fun because I'm like, okay, that could be a fun way to sort of subvert things and say, okay, well, we know who the killer is, so there has to be something else, and obviously there is, and through this kind of a year later thing, and blah blah blah. So yeah, but it doesn't though. That's the thing is like it's a decent setup for what could be, but this is terrible. I hate to even bring up Wish Upon. I saw this a couple nights ago, but this is the classic thing where movies have to sort of spin their wheels, like where the protagonist has to be really stupid for a period of time in the movie and not understand supernatural circumstances because it's padding essentially. And this is definitely one of those ones where it takes her way too long to realize like the exact words that you said. Wish Upon is a way worse movie, and also the she's like 5 wishes in until she
Jesus.
realizes like this is weird. This is what's going on. Like I'm saying stuff in a really specific phrasing and it's not working out for me.
Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, It's a Wonderful Life is not that bad.
Yeah.
if I can damn it with anything praise, I suppose.
Sure. In terms of the violence too, like that's one thing that I would be a lot more forgiving of this movie if the set pieces were had any imagination to them. There is a kind of a clever candy cane kill that feels also very expected, not even expected, but it just feels like, okay, it's a Christmas movie, so we need to implement this. And like, I kind of wonder if I would have been more into it had I seen this movie before I saw Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving had just obviously brilliant like use of Thanksgiving instruments and implements for the kills. And here, this just feels like, it feels like checking a box off a list and then just kind of just meandering to the finish line at the bottom of a staircase by ripping off Scream 2. Like,
oh yeah,
God, that's
I didn't think of that, but yeah, you're right.
That's what pissed me off so much about that. Yeah. Like if I can just go on a brief tangent about that, without spoiling it, there's a scene late in the movie where the killer is knocked unconscious, and then, I mean, very beneficial to the audience. One of the characters says, he's knocked out. He's out cold. We need to step up, like basically outlining what they need to do. We need to step over him at the bottom of the staircase, and he's just at the landing of it. And like, they have to very quietly and very slowly step over him. It is the lamest and laziest like ripoff of like a very tense scene that I actually wasn't too fond of in Scream 2, because it kind of stretched a little bit of like my suspension of disbelief. But that is a very confined space thing. In Scream 2, Sydney and her roommate are in the back of a police car that has just wrecked because Ghostface has driven it into a pole. And Ghostface is unconscious, so Sydney and her roommate have to get through the like mesh of the divider and then go through the like on top of him to get out of the car. Very, very tense, very interesting sequence. Here is just a group of people like not trying to be quiet, slowly stepping over an unconscious person at the bottom of of stairs. And it's like, there's no suspense. There's no immediacy or urgency, sense of urgency. It is just like a very just like anti-tension sequence. And it's so annoying. I hated that part so much.
Well, much like the characters, I'm trying to tiptoe around spoilers, but if I would just say there's basically a section in this movie where the characters think they have to do something to make things go back. And it kept nagging at me like, isn't that the wrong thing to do? Don't they have to do something else? And they end up doing the first thing, and then they end up having to do the second thing. Yep. I think hopefully that's spoiler free enough, but that was just the thing that was sort of nagging at me during it. And it turns out, they had to do something else to get things back to normal. So that's really that sort of second half, I would say, is really where it starts to fall apart for me. I would say, I think that the two actresses actually did a pretty solid job with kind of what they had. I don't think either of them are as good as is it Jessica Roth? Is that how she says her name? Or Roth?
Thinks
there's an E at the end.
Yeah, I think it's Roth, but it Tree in Happy Death Day. Right. Yeah.
She's great in those, and I think she's a big reason why those movies work so well, because in both movies I think she just really goes all out. And similarly Catherine Newton and Vince Vaughn, I mean, and that's Freaky sort of a different sort of movie, but regardless, like performances are there in those movies. I don't think they're up to that level, but I did think that Jane Widdop and is it Jess McLeod? McLeod? I don't know.
McLeod? I'm not sure.
I thought she was especially great as Bernie. So Bernie is she's sort of the outcast in the beginning, and then it turns out they sort of have to team up and everything. I thought she was actually really good. She reminded me of like Maya Hawke in like Stranger Things.
Totally got that vibe.
Sort of a thing, where it's like because like in Stranger Things, she comes in kind of at a later season. She's not necessarily like the outcast, but like, anyway, she sort of, she sort of comes into the show late, and I don't know. I really actually liked her performance quite a bit, to the extent where I was like, it would be cool to see her in other things, or like, is there a way they could have done this movie more like not around her character necessarily, but I don't know, just had her in there. I don't know. I did think that Jane Widdop was good too. So that's these are things that kept me in it generally.
Sure.
But
it helps that is it Bernie? Was that her name?
Characters. Bernie.
It helps that she's like the one character that they wrote like anything for, basically.
Right, absolutely.
She has like a little bit of depth there, and I don't know. I agree. She was good. I enjoyed her performance. But it's interesting that like I also want to kind of touch on Justin Long and Joel McHale both. Justin Long, like he's in a completely different, like he's in It's a Wonderful Life, I think. Like he is the cartoon villain of the town, very much playing that trope.
Where is he from? Where is his character from?
I have no idea.
Like he was giving me like South Carolina. Like I was like, because he has this very noticeable I mean, of course Justin Long is just hamming it up. I don't know, or whatever. I don't know. I think I saw an Ohio license plate, and I spent enough time in Ohio to know that no one in Ohio talks like that, even Southern Ohio. Anyway, regardless, he's just doing the whole thing, and it's just like,
it's so exaggerated. There's a moment late in the movie where he drops it entirely, and I love that because it's just that facade, and he's like exasperated.
Well, and I don't know if that's Justin Long dropping it or that character dropping. I don't know. I guess it could be kind of interesting if it's the character, but this movie doesn't. I don't think it's. I could be giving it too much credit, but I took it as the character dropping it. Like the character dropping it. Okay.
And then also like it's funny because like Justin Long and Joel McHale, in my opinion, are the two like standout performances for wildly different reasons. Like Justin Long, he over the top, hamming it up, like you said, and then Joel McHale is like he's very like not relatable, but like he's a character in this movie that is like he's playing up the like sadness and the drama of his character, and I'm like, did you read the script? Like, did you read like how? Like, are you not like it veers off into a like he's doing too much work for the product of the movie.
His characters between the two sort of universes, I feel like, are very like he's almost giving kind of two different performances. And there's one that's pretty dark. This movie sort of goes into the. I think I mentioned at some point, like, the color grading, like, like all of the colors totally tapped out, and it turns into not It's a Wonderful Life, but I don't know if you thought of this, but Back to the Future Part 2, when the sort of the past that Marty goes back to, anyway, where it's all Biff Tannen, and he is like, he runs the whole show, he runs the whole city, he has this 1,000-floor skyscraper, and everyone else is poor and everything else sucks in Hill Valley. Without saying too much about it, it has that sort of vibe to it. This movie gets pretty dark into that, and again, I almost sort of respect it because it's an R-rated movie, so I mean, but like there's like people smoking crack and like being like really down and out. And I was like, they're going there. I mean, I guess everyone would be super depressed if this guy who is, you know, a terrible, you know, mayor that's driving all of these jobs anyway, all this stuff. So everyone's miserable. So again, I mean, like, you know, there's some points here and there where I'm like, okay, they're like going for something a little bit, but but again, with like a slasher, like we've talked about this, you know, it's like you have to have the core thing make sense. Like it has to make sense within kind of how things play out, and especially if you're going to do one of these sort of what do we call them, like supernatural slasher? There's probably some portmanteau that someone's come up
probably
with.
Yeah.
You know, that are one of these sort of things. Like I think you have to have that locked down. You have to kind of play it out and see its logical conclusion, and this just doesn't. It gets more confusing sort of as it goes on. Justin Long's mayor has like supernatural powers by the end of this.
Oh my god, yes. Like what the hell was that?
That was totally out of nowhere. Aubrey was like, again, this isn't. I don't even care if this is a spoiler. She's like, everyone's eyes look really weird, and I'm like, oh well, they're probably just really sad. She literally said that. what a stupid, condescending thing for me to say. But anyway,
weird.
But then, so anyway, something happens, and their eyes sort of become unshuttered. You know, whatever. Not literally, but anyway. So apparently that happens. There's like powers that are brought in for. I don't know when, I don't know why. But.
Yep, that was so out of left field, and I was at that point. I'm like, I don't care enough to deconstruct the why of this. I'm just like, I'm running out the clock. Like, sure, yeah, why not? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, so it's not a good movie. I didn't enjoy it.
Thanksgiving is going to be PVOD like in 2 weeks. So
nice. Yep.
Please just wait for that.
Exactly. And as mentioned earlier in this episode, it did get announced that they're going to have a sequel. So that's very exciting. Oh yeah.
Coming back for seconds.
Oh yeah. So that is our review of It's a Wonderful Knife. Unless Brent, you have anything else you want to say about it?
That is it.
All right. I ended up rating it, I think, 1.5 stars out of 5. Just kind of abysmal.
Very generous. I gave 2.5.
Nice.
I do think the performances were there. I think with the two of them, I liked them working together.
Sure.
And a few other things. But it just doesn't work on the whole.
No, I'll never see it again. Oh, a funny anecdote about this is that I was excited about it being on Shudder, and then I was like, I got a Shudder subscription in October because that's kind of my usual thing is I'll get a 1-month subscription to Shudder, watch a bunch of stuff in October, and then rinse and repeat next year. So when this was coming out, I was like, man, I should really, maybe I'll re-up my Shudder subscription just for the month, and I'll watch this and then dig into a bunch of other stuff there. So I did that, but I did it through Google Play, and like the subscription through Google Play wouldn't work, even though that's how I subscribed to it in October. So like I paid money through Google Play, through the subscription, and like, when I loaded Shudder, it like would not let me access my account or wouldn't let me access it. Yeah. So I'm like, I got a refund from Google Play, and then like I messaged my friend Mike, who is the recurring co-host on the podcast. He'll be in the year in review episode next month. I was like, hey, do you have a Shudder subscription I can borrow? And he's like, I'm sorry, I use my friends, I can't give it. I'm like, oh, that's fine. So I ended up getting a 1-week trial as on the Amazon Prime additional channel of Shudder. So I was able to watch it without paying the $6.99 for a Shudder subscription, and I'm so glad, because I would have been very angry if I spent $7 to watch this movie.
Right. I probably shouldn't be saying this on the podcast, but I literally just re-upped for a full year of AMC Plus. So,
nice.
you know,
Well, there you go.
Maybe hit me a message if ever run into trouble like that again. But of
I
course,
definitely
normally
will.
pay for it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely not winking at you over Google Meet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's Shudder usually just has some stuff. Well, I mean, you know, the AMC side of stuff too. It's like one of those ones where it's like, okay, like it has enough stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they do have like the IFC stuff. You know, Blackberry is definitely one of you know, it's really strong movie that I liked a lot this year. And I didn't watch the 3-part series thing that they did because I think that's kind of a little odd. But regardless, they split the movie up into a 3-part miniseries that's on AMC Plus, which I've not seen.
Wow,
I've seen the movie, but they basically did a 3-part miniseries and they added more stuff.
Okay.
I've never heard of that happening, where you have a movie that was theatrically released and then they put it on a streaming service, cut up with extra scenes. I've never heard. That's the first time I'd ever heard of that.
The only like thing that I can compare it to, but it's not like a 1-to-1 thing, is like the like extended editions of things and the Hateful Eight, the kind of roadshow version of it. Like they have like a 4-part thing on Netflix. But
I'm
yeah,
not sure what
weird.
the strategy was, but I wonder if it's people thinking movies are too long.
Yeah.
And if we give it to people in 3-hour chunks, 3-hour long chunks, because I think it's 3 or 5. I think I'm pretty sure it's 3.
Okay.
And the movie was probably about like 2 hours, so maybe it's like an additional whatever. Anyway, I don't know exactly what the metrics were, but I wonder if it is that thing. You know, they're just like, people hate movies.
Yes.
Like, just don't call it a movie. We can make movies, but
that makes
when we distribute them, they have to be serious.
Right. That makes me very curious to see what happens. I think it's with Napoleon, with Ridley Scott saying that like he has like a 4.5-hour cut of that movie that will be on Apple TV Plus. I kind of wonder if they'll do like something like that, or if he'll tell them to fuck off. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do a whole other episode about like the peekaboo streaming release thing that like Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon are doing with Apple TV, both of them, Apple TV Plus, where it's like, it'll be on Apple TV Plus someday. And then they do this little thing, the finger near them, maybe, you know, it's like, is it going to be 2023 or 2024? We need to know.
Yes.
I'm not telling. That's some publicist over at Apple, Apple TV Plus doing that voice. But that's sort of interesting. I mean, you know, so getting back to It's a Wonderful Knife just very briefly.
Yeah.
That's something where you know it's going to be on Shudder. And if it's a Wonderful Knife, we'd assume it's probably going to be in December.
Right.
So you have stuff like that. But there's stuff like Killers of the Flower Moon as we sit here today, and Napoleon. I don't know when those are going to be on Apple TV Plus. Either of those.
Same here. They just
Killers
announced...
of the Flower Moon just hit PVOD, but
Yep.
Who knows?
So we'll see. Yeah, but that is our review of It's a Wonderful Knife. Once again, it's on Shudder. I don't recommend it. Just watch Thanksgiving again. That's my suggestion. And Brent, to kind of round out this episode, I want to do kind of a brief potpourri section if you're game for that. Okay, cool. So if this is your first time listening, Potpourri is the section of the podcast where we kind of wind down and share our thoughts on things that we've watched lately, things we're looking forward to, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. And Brent, since we're in the midst of screener season, award season, all of that good stuff, I had asked Sam this question earlier in the episode. Are there any movies that you have watched in the run-up to like the IFJA awards that you have been particularly taken with and want to give a bigger spotlight to here on the Obsessive Viewer podcast?
Well, I've been watching Wish Upon.
Of course.
So the deal with that is that Red Letter Media just put out like a video, like a watch-along video. Like it was 50 minutes long.
Of Wish Upon?
for Wish Upon.
Oh, okay.
A couple days ago. Wish Upon is a stupid horror movie that came out in 2017. Your Movie Sucks did, I think, a watch along years ago that I never watched because I'm like, I don't know, watch alongs tend to be more fun if you watch along or have seen the movie. So, and I just never got to it. And then so Red Letter Media did one 2 days ago, and I'm like, all right, the Venn diagram is hit. These two internet forces have both convened upon Wish Upon. So we decided to watch it, and it was indeed hilariously bad.
Nice.
So besides Wish Upon, which I probably shouldn't have wasted my time on, especially this time of year, we did watch Poor Things last night, which is not really. I mean, it's not. In our world, it's not a small release. I think for other people, I don't know like how this will do in theaters.
Right.
But this is a Searchlight movie that'll be coming out. Maybe I mean, technically limited. It'll be coming out in December, but like I don't know when it's really going to expand.
Yeah.
This is the newest Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, Jared Carmichael, Willem Dafoe. Yeah, it was excellent. I mean, it was probably my most anticipated movie for, I would say, most of the year. I mean, if not really the whole year, because there was this movie, Poor Things, and then a movie called And that Yorgos Lanthimos was working on kind of concurrently.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about And. Huh.
And so that actually just got a title change as well.
Okay.
I think it's called Kind and Kindness or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Something like that. Anyway, I'm going off the top of my head with that. But so I didn't like when everything was coming out and everything, but it's Yorgos Lanthimos, and I was just excited about that in general.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what is your relationship with him? Because I am kind of...
We're lovers.
Okay. Nice.
I had seen Dogtooth at a time where I had seen some foreign movies, but that was one that really felt like it wasn't just not from this country, but not from this planet.
Yeah.
So I was really, really taken with that one in particular. And then I've kind of generally loved everything he's come. I'm not as big on Killing of a Sacred Deer, which in hindsight of like Saltburn, like Barry Keoghan, I mean, that movie is still really good, but I mean, The Favorite was my favorite of 2018, I think. The Lobster was very high up in 2016 for me. So he's definitely like one of those filmmakers that I really treasure a lot, and really anything they're kind of involved in. I don't think he was really involved in The Great, although Tony McNamara, who frequently writes with Yorgos Lanthimos, as he did on Poor Things, was very involved with that show, The Great, which was on Hulu for 3 seasons, not being renewed for a 4th. But I watched that show, really big fan of that too. I don't know if people need a synopsis for Poor Things. It's basically Emma Stone's character. It's sort of a very wonky Frankenstein movie that takes place like in London and Paris. Like it's sort of steampunky, I guess, because like it's sort of the past, but there's fantastical things and colors and settings and all that stuff that's very fantastical.
The trailer made me kind of think of like a Terry Gilliam kind of aesthetic.
Yes, very much Terry Gilliam, and some like Fritz Lang, and there definitely some like Metropolis vibes, or some of it too. There's kind of a German expression. It's its own thing. I mean, he makes his own kind of things. It's like I think it's a fantastic movie. I think Emma Stone, I mean, probably the best lead performance I've seen this year. I mean, it is just insane what she does in this movie. It's just like, it's so funny and specific, and watching her character sort of transition to like having really basic phonetics to just becoming much more eloquent, and like her body language. You can teach classes alone on what she does with her just like body language throughout this entire movie. So she's excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like such a weird thing. I was like, I don't like it quite as much as The Favorite, but like that was like my favorite movie of that year, and I think that's still Yorgos Lanthimos' best movie. So maybe I don't like it quite as much as that, but this is like going to be in my top 5. So I mean, you know, that's you know, it if you haven't seen any of his movies, honestly, I'd be like, start with this one, because I can't really say that there's like a super accessible movie of his. Maybe The Favorite.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I'm mildly excited to see Poor Things. I'm gonna prioritize it, of course, but like with Lanthimos, I can't, like, Dogtooth I saw like for the first time like maybe 4 years ago, I think. And like it's a like you said, it's not of this planet basically. But it's a unique story. It's interesting, and I kind of like was into it. But like Killing of a Sacred Deer, there's this, I don't know if this is a fault of me just as someone who's viewing his movies, but like there is just this like feeling of just unease, like kind of not gross, but I'm just like, I'm so like unnerved by his movies, and I can't really like point to a specific thing about it, but it's just, they're so off the wall that I'm just like, I can't really find a route into it. So like, I've never seen The Lobster, but I feel like I should definitely see The Lobster because it sounds like the kind of movie that I would be into. But The Favorite was great because it is sort of not accessible, but sort of like accessible by his standards, I guess.
It's more like a very irreverent take on like a costume drama.
Yes.
So yeah, that's probably technically his most accessible, but there's definitely still some like, you know, off the wall choices and things, and you know, in that movie. But
but yeah,
the only consolation I can give you with Poor Things is that where if you're saying that you're not sure what's making you uneasy in his movies that you've seen in the past, Poor Things, you'll at least be able to point and understand to the things that are making you uncomfortable. And one thing I can tell you right now is the score. It sounds like a harp that's playing in dishwater.
Interesting.
In a sink.
Jesus. Okay.
It's very loopy. So, yeah, he's his own kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's really had a lot of critical appreciation, I think, especially for The Favorite, and kind of even, I think, The Lobster in some pockets, and you know, in this movie, I mean, we'll see, you know, come award season. I think Emma Stone is the one thing in this movie that people are going to be like, you could throw out, if you wanted, all the weird stuff and still see a performance that's really, really first rate. But you know, I like all the other weird stuff too.
So he's definitely a kind of mood filmmaker. Like, I have to be in the right headspace to watch his stuff. Yeah. So that's Poor Things. It is going to be in theaters this weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
In some markets, I think that's going to be like a New York, LA thing this weekend, and then I don't have showtimes yet in Fort Wayne, but I'm almost positive it'll be like in you know, bigger theaters, hopefully by the end of this month.
Yeah, nice. And to round out Potpourri, just a real quick movie that I watched a few nights ago, 1001, which is streaming on Amazon Prime. It's about a woman in 1994 New York City who gets out of jail and basically kidnaps her son from foster care and then raises him. And it is a trip. It is very good. The performances are fantastic. It spans several years, and the kind of family dynamic and the way that she struggles to just like to be a good parent and to like raise her child is really great, especially with the backdrop of, like, as I think the plot summary compares it or describes it as against the backdrop of a changing New York. It's really good. Have you checked this one out yet?
Yeah, I saw this one, I believe, on Peacock this summer or something.
Okay.
Whenever it was on Peacock, because this is a Focus features.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I was a fan. I think especially very performance driven movie. I do like what you mentioned about different periods of New York. They serve as the chapters are almost kind of demarcated by with like portions of speeches that mayors of New York have given. I thought that was such a neat detail of like these just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani is in it a decent amount. Like all these like mayors who just like they talk about like their city and like the problems that they're going to combat, and it's very rich and very white. And then it's juxtaposed with like, no, this is you're actually getting the real, like what things really feel like for people in this movie. That's what the movie's about. So I thought that was a really neat juxtaposition, not just like socioeconomically and politically, but just narratively. I thought that was kind of a neat way to, again, show the passage of time, as you mentioned. So
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely a good movie. And yeah, so it's on Prime now, because I think they do the like split time or whatever. So yeah, hopefully people will have a chance to check it out. Yeah,
totally. And I just remembered your Letterboxd blurb on that was great. I just pulled it up. You said, starting to get a bad vibe from this Rudy Giuliani fellow. Which I got a huge kick out of that. That was really good. Yeah. So that should do it for this week's edition of The Obsessive Viewer. Brent, thank you so much for joining me for the second half of the episode. And Sam, if you're out there, thank you for joining me again. Yeah, because he's not here right now. But can you tell
that tape over his mouth?
Yeah. Exactly. Can you tell that it's a little awkward for me to record two segments in separate times?
No, not at all. I am looking forward to joining you next February when they reboot Valentine.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I
was going to say, are they?
No. Well, they are now that I mentioned it.
Yeah, you are. But, I think at this point you have become
I'm the holiday slasher guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first Omen is coming out this next year. So I'll force you back on for that. But that'll do it for this episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Brent, thank you again, and tell the listeners where they can find your work again.
Awakeinthedark.com is the best place. On Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, Letterboxd, all that. Check it out.
Nice. And next week on the show, the plan is for me to review Silent Night for the main feature review, the new John Woo movie, and the secondary review will be for Leave the World Behind, which is going to be on Netflix on this Friday, so December 8th. So that'll be next week. I don't know who's going to be on it or if I'm going to fly solo for it. We'll see. But I'm going to start playing myself out and once again give a quick pitch to the Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can find tons of exclusive content that I record. Last week, all told, I recorded 6 hours worth of podcasts between Patreon and the main feeds. So consider signing up on Patreon. But thank you again, Brent, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's so funny to me that now I'm going to say this, but we all know that here in a few weeks, Anyone But You comes out, which is the Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney rom-com. So this could change in a few weeks, but it is so weird to me that my favorite romantic comedy of this year is about a dog and a robot. Robot Dreams is wonderful. I wrote on Letterboxd just a quick blurb. I put wonderful, just wonderful, endlessly charming and sweet with a constant feeling of forlorning woven within it. Beautiful.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.